Today's show is brought to you by the Pittsburgh Dance Council, a project of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. For more than 50 years, the Pittsburgh Dance Council has been bringing world-class contemporary dance performances to downtown. And the new season looks so fun. We're talking folks from Taiwan, Cuba, Mexico, France, LA, and New York. And tickets are available now for the upcoming season. Plus, we've got a special offer for CityCast Pittsburgh listeners. Use promo code DANCECAST for 30% off your tickets. The deal is only good through this Sunday, October 13th, so visit trustarts.org/dance to get your seats now.
Pittsburgh Opera presents Puccini's Tosca, October 5th through 13th. Claudia Tosca must free her lover from the clutches of a corrupt police chief. This whirlwind thriller packs romance, dark motives, betrayal, murder, and intrigue into a plot that will keep you on the edge of your seat. See why Tosca is one of the most powerful operas ever. Learn more at pittsburghopera.org/Tosca. Pittsburgh Opera, where can we take you?
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. The Steel City loves to revel in its own history, but so many of these stories are rooted in colonialism and the generations of immigration that followed. Ahead of Indigenous Peoples Day next week, we're revisiting a conversation between CityCast's Elizabeth Kama and Miguel Suge from the Council of Three Rivers Indian American Center about whose land we're actually on. It's Tuesday, October 8th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
So, Miguel, in school, we were always taught about Native history as ending way in the past, especially here in Pennsylvania. But we actually had a reservation in our region in the 60s. What happened?
That's a good question. The last bit of land that was left in Western Pennsylvania was a little tiny reservation along the Allegheny River, our river, the same river that we sit on, but a little bit further upstream in a place called Corn Planter in Warren County, Corn Planter's Grant. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? George Washington signed that treaty. You're going to be able to keep this land. We took everything else, but you're allowed to keep this land. And then you also are going to be able to keep some reservations north of the border in New York State. There were 3 major reservations there, but you can keep that last one in Pennsylvania. That didn't last very long. In 1965, Pittsburghers decided that they were sick and tired of all the flooding here. You know, the Allegheny River kept flooding all the time. Mm-hmm. And, any old timers can tell you that the water downtown would reach like second and third floor of some of those buildings in downtown Pittsburgh. That wasn't going to do. So they put together a flood control project that the centerpiece of that flood control project was a gigantic dam in Warren County called the Kinzua Dam. And guess what that did? That flooded out the whole reservation in Warren County. All those people were forced to move across the border north into New York State. And the argument that's always said to those people, what are you guys complaining about? We're moving you out of your lands, out of your territory, but you're going north and there's Senecas living there. And my response to that is think in terms like this. We have houses, we have property here in Western Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh and so forth. Mm-hmm. Imagine somebody coming and telling you you're going to have to give up your house, you're going to have to give up your property, you're going to have to give up your life, the way you make a living, mm-hmm. and move across the border into Ohio. But don't worry, there's white people living there too, so you'll be fine.
Wow. I mean, that's a difficult history that Pittsburgh has to contend with.
Well, you have to understand a little bit about the history of Western Pennsylvania as a whole and Pittsburgh in general, is that history is everywhere, all over the place, surrounding us. We take it for granted. We just don't see it. Every time we go to the town of Aliquippa and say the name Aliquippa, we're saying the name of an important indigenous matriarch, a woman that was very important in this area. If we go to Sharpsburg, the main street in Sharpsburg, there's an intersection in which there has always been a statue of one of the greatest chiefs of this area, a Seneca chief by the name of Gayasuda. And there's a Boy Scout camp not too far from that, also called Camp Gayasuda. Everywhere you go in Pittsburgh, there's indigenous history. You can't avoid it. And so we should be aware of that as Pittsburghers and as Western Pennsylvanians.
I mean, so whose land are we on?
Let's talk a little bit about the Seneca people, because they really dominated this area in the 1700s when the first colonists began to come into this area. They are a group, a nation, that belonged to a language family that was spread out all over this region, not just Pennsylvania, but also west into Ohio, south into Maryland, north into Canada, and as far east as New England. That was that gigantic area taken up by the Iroquoians. That's the language family. And of those people, there's something like 15 tribes involved, but 5 of them are the ones that we really like to focus on: the Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondagas, the Oneidas, and the Mohawks. And a lot of those names are probably very familiar to people because these are names of people that everybody has heard. Okay? The Senecas, the Cayugas, the Onondagas, the Oneidas, and the Mohawks united into a confederacy, which was rejected by some of the other tribes. They invited the other Iroquoian tribes to join them, but those guys turned them down. And so it just ended up 5 of them. And they became very powerful because of their unity. You know, in unity there is strength. That's what people always say. And that happened to this group. They became so powerful that other indigenous people of the area who tried to challenge their possession of the Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio area did not succeed.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. With Halloween just around the corner, some of us have been thinking about masks, playing a part, doing it for the bit, but pretending to be someone else should be for fun, not for our emotions. If you feel like you've been overwhelmed and you've been trying to put on a brave face, maybe therapy can help. And I've been to therapy, and it's really nice to have someone to talk to without burdening your partner or your family or friends who, let's be honest, they love you to pieces, but can be out of their depth when you're clearly struggling with something and need a better outlet for those feelings. And sometimes just getting started can be the hardest part. BetterHelp can make finding someone so much easier. All you need to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched to a licensed therapist. The care is entirely online, so it's flexible to fit your busy schedule. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/CityCast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CityCast.
Hi, this is David Plotz of CityCast. Have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow and learn and become a better version of yourself? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing a language. And that's how Babbel approaches it. It's designed for real conversation. So I have a trip to France planned with my girlfriend. Was it inspired by the Olympics? Yes, it was. And it's given me the chance to revive my old high school French. And it's so fun to catch back up with the vocabulary I'd forgotten, to remember all the food. For example, I'm in a lesson on ingredients, so I'm going to make crepes with butter and sugar. Avec sucre et de beurre salé, on va se régaler. We're going to have a feast. They learned this great new French expression too. J'en ai l'eau à la bouche. That means I have water in the mouth. That means it's mouth-watering. Love it. Love French. Anyway, Babbel gets you talking, and studies from Yale and Michigan State University and other leading universities prove that it works. So here is a special holiday deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at Babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast, spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So does that mean that it was mainly people who spoke Iroquoian in this region?
So as time went on, people kept getting pushed out of their home territory and then asked permission of the Iroquois to move into Iroquois land. And since a lot of the Iroquois land was controlled by this one Iroquois tribe, the Senecas, they ended up hosting these people. The two most important ones were people that came from the Philadelphia area, which was the Delawares. They call themselves the Lenape. So these Lenape or Delaware were actually driven out of eastern Pennsylvania and came into Seneca territory. They were welcomed in and they were allowed to settle in the most important Lenape village was a village in what is now Lawrenceville.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right there in Arsenal Park.
Huh.
And then there was another group that came from the south, and they also made their presence here. They're called the Shawnee.
Mm-hmm.
And the Shawnee were a very strong non-Iroquoian tribe that were allowed to live in this area under the control of the Seneca people. And if you went to any of these villages, whether it was Shanapinstown in Lawrenceville, or if you went up the Ohio River into where McKees Rocks, or you go up the Allegheny River towards Route 28, towards Kittanning, all of those places were native villages.
This is such a rich history. Do you think that this is just a case of, history is written by the victors and that's why we don't generally learn it?
So to a certain extent, that's part of it. Is
Mm-hmm.
the native people actually were considered an obstacle in the westward progress of the colonial era of pre-revolution America, which is English, and then later on, after the United States became a country after the revolution, the indigenous people became a real obstacle. And so because the indigenous people were seen always as the enemy, they've been kind of like written out of American history in favor of the colonists. The colonists get center stage, and the Indians are just mentioned in passing as an obstacle that the colonists had to overcome. So you never hear the names of the great chiefs or the great leaders or even, the people that lived in this area. You didn't have to be a great chief or a great leader, just people, just normal people living their lives in this area, trying to make a living, and then being their lives and their traditions being totally wrecked.
I mean, yeah, that's a huge loss. I know we've been talking a lot about Indigenous history, but there are Native communities here today. Could you tell me about them?
So, Pittsburgh and the whole region around Pittsburgh for a long time was a hub of industrial activity.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that draws people from everywhere. People from other countries. There are lots of people from Eastern Europe that came, created the wonderful neighborhoods that we have, multi-ethnic neighborhoods that we have in Pittsburgh. But it also drew Native people from other parts of the country who came here looking for work. They came here looking to work in the coal mines. They came here looking to work in the steel mills, the glass factories. And so we got a brand new crop of indigenous people that were not originally from Western Pennsylvania. And now our community, our Native community here in Pittsburgh, is composed of all these people. Yeah, we still have some Senecas, not too many, but we still have some Senecas living in Pittsburgh. But most of them are from, they're Creek, they're Cherokees, they're Seminoles, all kinds of different out-of-state tribes.
Miguel Suge is a board member at the Council of Three Rivers American Indian Center. Thanks so much for talking with me.
It's been a pleasure.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Thank you again to everyone who joined us during our membership campaign last week. We really, really appreciate it, and we're grateful you helped us get to our goals. If you want to rate the show, leave us a nice review. We would also really appreciate it. It helps folks find us. And make sure you subscribe to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to y'all soon.
Why is it my computer just does not want to open this document?